making the outer gusset. That's including the zip gusset, the D-rings and the base gusset. Now we are going to be starting to work on, while we make that, the gusset, the outer gussets, we're going to be attaching the lining gussets as well. Now I know one of my testers has picked up on a few things that she wanted to change. So she ended up doing a bias binding finish inside. That's possible. It's very possible actually, and it's a lot easier to do a bias bound edge. To do a bias bound edge, personally, I like the method that I'm doing now, but the bias bound edge is basically, once you've sewn on the everything on the gusset, base stitch around the two very long edges, so you'll be going around the circumference twice. I will tell you when to do that. And then when we come to making, bringing the whole bag together, I will show you how to do the bias bind. Well, I will talk you through how to do the bias binding if you want to do the bias binding trick. Now I'm going to do the lining bag of the bag built around on the wrong side of the bag, and it will come together in your head once you see me do it on the video, and it's a lot more efficient. You don't use as much fabric, and then you haven't got the hassle of the bias binding edges inside with the bulk. Right, so for this next step, this next part of the bag, you're going to need your base outer, which is, I've got interfacing on mine because my PU stretches. I've got my fusible fleece, which I've cut all the way around and fused that to the wrong side. I've got my lining fabric, my base lining fabric, which has got my interfacing on. Then I've got two zip gusset outer pieces, and just like my base, I've done interfacing and fusible fleece and trimmed back the fusible fleece. Then I have two lining zip gusset pieces, which has interfacing on both of those. Then I have two D-ring tabs for the crossbody straps. I've gone ahead and prepped those already, so that has got interfacing on the back. I've pressed the two long edges into the centre on both of those, so I've cut out a little step there. I've got my long zip, which I have ended up sewing over the edges, so the zip pull the two zip pulls don't pull off, and I've got my two D-rings. First of all, we're going to work on the D-rings, and then we'll move on to making the zip gusset part. If you have no way of doing rivets, once you have pressed the two long sides into the centre on the wrong side, go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on the top edge using a stitch length number 3, and you're doing that 1/8 of an inch on all four long sides. However, I'm going to use the small rivet in both of these to just do what you would do next after you've top stitched. Okay, so I've got my rivet press and my Japanese hole punch. I'm going to feed, so my right side is pointing out, and feed that through that centre bar. I'm going to run a clip at the end, and I'm going to do that for both of them. Okay. Then I'm going to measure down round about 1/2 inch from where it folds over the bar. Right, so because my D-rings are quite thick, the actual D-ring thickness is wider than I normally use, I'm going to go down 3/4 of an inch and just pop a mark in the centre. I'm going to do the same with this one as well. Okay. If you haven't got the facility of doing rivets or Chicago screws, you will just need to sew across as close as you can get to the D-ring itself, and then you can move on to the next step. I'm going to punch the holes where those marks are for my rivets, and then I'm just going to set those rivets. And then basically I'm just going to pop those to one side, and we're going to make the zip gusset. Okay, so we're going to work with one piece at a time. So I'm going to pop one of each to one side, and we're going to run on the right side of the main outer piece quilter's tape along the one edge. If you have never used quilter's tape and you are still new at putting zips in, grab some quilter's tape. It's a game changer for zip making. When I say quilter's tape, it could be known as wonder tape or wash away tape. This tape is ideal for sewing over. It will not gum up your machine, and the wash away one washes away. So if you can see it once you've finished your bag or putting in the zip or whatever you're using it for, with a bit of water put on it, and then within 10 to 15 minutes it's disappeared. So it's very good. Right, so peel off the backing tape. Then you're going to get the zip pulls and pull those to the end, but make sure you have sewn over the end. I like to have an overhang so we don't have to mess around with the zip pulls. I'm going to flip the zip so it's right side facing down and match up this edge of the zip tape to that edge, and stick it into place. Okay, so that's stuck into place. And I've got my zip pulls overhanging, and I've got a bit of zip either side overhanging. We're going to get quilter's tape, and on the wrong side of the zip, on the side that we just put quilter's tape on, I'm going to run some more quilter's tape. Okay, you're going to peel off this backing tape. Okay, and then you're going to get your lining piece. So the lining right side needs to be to the wrong side of the zip, matching up the edges. Now, I think my lining could be a bit too long. I will soon see. Yeah, I thought it was when I cut it, but I thought I'll leave it on just in case, knowing my look, it's not perfect. So I'm just going to peel back this zip and trim back this lining piece. Or rather cut it once it's stuck into place, rather than cut it beforehand and then realise it's too short. Okay. Right, so the next thing you're going to do is go over to your sewing machine and sew the zip into place. Now, because this is a number 5 zip, you're going to use a seam allowance of 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. That will bring you pretty close to the zip coil. If you have a zipper foot, put this on. It means that you get an accurate finish, and you sew quite close to the zip coil. I'm going to use a stitch length 2.4 and I'm going to reverse my stitch at the start and at the end. Okay, as you can see, I've sewn the zip into place. You're going to finger press this lining open, then you're going to pop this, flip this over, bring the lining to match the edge here. Now if you've used a cotton base fabric which you can iron, you can just go ahead and press both of these open. However, I can't because I'm using PU. So I'm matching this edge of the PU to the edge here. So because I've got my zipper foot on, my machine hates top stitching with the zipper foot on. So I'm going to move on to the next step. However, if your zipper foot is okay, top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge here by the zip. Use a stitch length 3.5 to 4. And then basically come and do the next step. However, I'm going to top stitch once I've attached the next side, so I don't have to keep taking my foot off. So I'm going to pop that to one side there, grab the other main outer piece and run quilter's tape along the one edge. Peel off that backing. Okay, then you're going to get the zip that we've just attached. Bring that down, and then the edge that you have the tape on is going to go right side to this side of the zip. Match up this short end here to this short edge here and stick it on top of the zip like so. You're going to flip that over, make sure your zip has no creases in, and then from that edge there to there, we're going to run quilter's tape on the wrong side of the zip. Peel off the backing tape. Get the last lining zip gusset piece, right side facing to the wrong side of the zip, but it will be right side to right side of the lining. Match up this short edge to this short edge and stick into place. And I have the same problem like I did last time on this one, but I'm going to trim it back once I've sewn it on. Okay, so I'm going to now sew these together using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, using the stitch length 2.5. Okay, so I've attached the zip. I'm now going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on both edges. I'm using, on my machine, it'd be a stitch length number 4, but anything between a 3.5 to 4. Then I'm going to go one step further, bring my zip pulls into the centre and sew just over the zip. I'm not going to touch this end here, and I will show you that in the next clip. And then I will trim off the excess. Okay, so I don't know what I was thinking when I was top stitching. I said 1/8 of an inch. You are definitely going to need to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away. However, I went to 1/16, and that was me being daydreaming, and I top stitched at 1/16. So I ended up having to do a second row. So as you can see, my first row is 1/16 away, and it's super close to that edge. And then I did a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge on both sides. My advice is to stick to the 1/8 of an inch. I just really day tripped out. I think it's the heat. I can't keep blaming the heat. I think I just had a Becky moment. Right, okay, so I have top stitched just over the zip area. As you can see from the back, I have not top stitched over the edge here. You are just top stitching between the 2 PU pieces to the 2 zip pieces over the zip on both sides. Make sure your zip pulls are in the centre, and then we're just going to trim off the excess. Okay, so now we trim those off. You're going to get your 2 D-rings and you are going to pop those right on top of the zip. You can move these now so they get rid of any indents that they make in your PU. If they make indents, don't worry, they will drop out. Now, they will only drop out if you have left them in for a short period like I have. Do not leave clips in cork or PU overnight because those indents will never come out. So you're going to get your D-ring and just pop it over where the zip is. And you're going to pop the raw edge onto the end and on the other one as well. Okay, so like before, you are going to only sew in the zip area. So you need to base stitch these into place. I'm going to do it 1/4 inch away, and I'm only going to sew, I'm only going to sew from here to here. I'm going to reverse my stitch here and here. I'm not going to sew on this section or this section here. Right, as you can see, I've base stitched those into place, and as you can see, I didn't sew anywhere over just the area where the D-ring is, and that should be between your stitch lines, your top stitching lines of the zip. You're now going to, now this is where the trick is, we're going to work on the outer part first. Just make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, I'm going to work on the outer part first. So the first thing we're going to do is flip this over. We need to remove this out of the seam area, and that's the lining piece. So you're going to need some clips. So you're going to bring the 2 lining pieces up, then you're going to fold them out the way, like so. And then you're going to do the same with this one. As you can see here, what I've done is made sure the lining is pulled back right to where that stitching line is. That'll be a top stitch line this side here. So my first top stitching line is the second one that I had to do. And you're going to do that for both pieces. You're going to get your base outer gusset piece, and you're going to get your zip gusset and pop those right sides together. Make sure that D-ring is pointing down towards the zip. And you're going to clip the 2 edges together. Okay, I'm going to work on this one side first. You're going to start sewing here 3/8 of an inch away, reverse your stitch, and you're going to sew as close as you can get to where this this part is here, this folded over piece here. My machine tends to stop around about here. That's fine, we're going to correct the gap that's going to create later. And then you're going to start, reverse your stitch at this end here. Then you're going to lift up your presser foot, not sew over this part here. We're not going to touch that part at the moment. Then you're going to start from here. Now, I tend to find that under my machine, I can't get it under. So what I end up having to do is roll up this, like so. Put this into my throat area, and sew from here, from this edge up to as close as I can get to this edge here. I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to do this off camera because obviously I can't find my other camera, and then I'm going to basically show you when I get back. So as you can see, I started off sewing here and finished approximately there, reversed my stitch, then I rolled it up, I drew on a line, which is the 3/8 of an inch line, started here and sewed all the way as far as I can get to that seam up here and reverse my stitch. Now we're going to repeat the same process on this side. Now we have sewn those together, you should have something looking like this with your lining of your zip gusset up at the top. Now we're going to attach the base gusset, so we're going to take these clips off. Now I'm just going to quickly go to my iron and give this a good press, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, so I've given those two lining pieces a good press. Now we're going to do the same with the base lining, but this time we're only going to sew the two lining pieces, not the outer pieces. So I tend to find opening up the zip helps, not all the way, but most of the way. Then fold those up so we have just the lining showing on both sides. Now the reason why I have opened it up is I like to stuff that excess gusset through. Okay. Then we're going to get the right side of the base lining pointing up, and then we're going to match up the right side of the zip gusset to the right side. And clip. Right, because we have more bulk here than what we did with the lining, you will tend to find that you can sew a bit less. That's fine. So you're going to start sewing here and as far as you can get towards where this seam is, and you're going to reverse your stitch at the start and at the end. You're going to do 3/8 of an inch, and then like I did last time, I'm going to roll mine up, draw on my sewn line, and then basically stitch my sew between there and reverse my stitch. And then I'm going to repeat the same for this edge as well. So I'm going to do that all off camera and I'll meet you back. Okay, so you should just have your lining attached to your lining piece. We're going to unclip those outer pieces and bring that out. Gonna just go in and zip up the zip for the time being. Right, so you should be left with something that looks like this. So you will have a gap here and here. So the first thing I do is, now this isn't actually mentioned in the pattern, I actually found this out when I did a mock-up with my club, and I prefer doing this way. So while the seams are out like this, I'm just going to stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge on all of my seams, and I'm just going to stitch just over where the zip is. So that's about 1/2 an inch in here. This bit here, I'm just sewing this bit here. I'm just going to stitch here, and I'm going to do the same with this side as well. So once again, just going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge from here to here and reverse my stitch. And I'm just going to do that for both seams, then I'll be back here. Okay, so as you can see, I just stitched just in that little gap there and just in that little gap. Now that's going to help you for your D-ring, especially if you overfill the bag. Okay, so we're going to turn the lining so it's right side facing out, like so. Then you're going to flip the whole thing right side facing out. Okay. Now if you are going to do the bias binding edge finish for your lining, you can go ahead and top stitch along this part here 1/8 of an inch away, and I personally would use a stitch length number 4. However, if you're doing the lining that I'm showing today, you can't stitch from edge to edge, top stitch from edge to edge. We are only going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away where the D-ring is. So the D-ring is 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to start here, sew and finish here. And I tend to find to do 2 rows of stitches at the same width. So remember, that's 3/4 of an inch. We are not sewing past this part here or this part here. What you tend to do is make sure your seams are pointing down towards the base, and you're going to do that for both edges. Now you will find once you've top stitched between those 2 marks that I said between the D-ring tab, it will catch here, and it means this part here is completely closed up then. However, what I just did before where we sewed it just slightly, it is actually already closed up, but we are going to make it closed up even more. So go ahead, top stitch whichever way I'm telling you to do so, whether you're doing, if you're doing bias binding as you're finished inside, top stitch from side to side, from edge to edge. If you're doing my lining way, top stitch from here to here, and reverse your stitches at the start and at the end, and do 2 rows. Now I'm doing 1/8 of an inch away and 1/4 of an inch away, and I'm doing that on both edges. Okay, so I've gone ahead and top stitched, and as you can see, I've only top stitched in that area, and I've done 2 rows of stitches. That comes out as 2 rows of stitches here to close off the edge, and I've done that on both sides. We are now going to find the centre top of the 2 edges of the zip gusset and the centre bottom of all the edges. So personally, I like to turn it inside out. We're going to need to turn it inside out anyway. I match up this seam here to this seam here, and I tend to just pop a clip in. Just make sure that's spot on. Yeah. I'll do the same with this side as well. Okay. I'll move my zip holes out the way, but keep the zip closed. Okay. Means I can hold that and really make that flat. I'm going to snip into the seam allowance on the where the fold is by 1/4 of an inch. Those scissors, those snips don't like too bulky fabric. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat the same with this. So I end up getting my hand inside, really straightening out the fabric and snip into those. Okay, take those clips out. I'm now going to open up my zip to about there. I'm going to bring the lining back over, but we're keeping this so it's right side facing in, so the main outer is still right side facing in. We're going to now move the lining out of the way for the next few steps. So you're going to bring up the lining, and you want it away from these side edges. I tend to clip it all the way. Get that roll in the centre. You tend to find that you will have to give the lining a bit of a press afterwards, so don't stress if there's creases in it or anything. Okay, so I've got that out the way. Making sure my zip is open. I'm fully opening it just to give me that extra bit. Right, so I'm going to get my back main outer. And then obviously this is my top, so I'm going to bring those two down. I'm going to get my zip gusset, and I'm only working on the main outer fabric, not this lining piece. And I'm going to match up the centre of this one edge to the centre top of this and clip. And then we're going to do the centre bottom, of the lining of the main outer to the centre base gusset and clip that into place. Okay. Now this bit I am going to speed up a little once I've talked you through it. You're going to go round and clip all the edges together. Now you shouldn't have to clip around the corners. However, if you're finding that the gusset isn't matching the corners, you might need to snip it in, but only snip where it needs to snip. So I'm just going to do this fast on the camera, speed up this footage, but use as many clips as possible. Okay, so I just flipped that over to see if any of the that it wasn't rolled over or anything, just to make sure I don't have to sew over it again. So you're now going to sew all the way around using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I tend to find putting my my extension table on my sewing machine helps, because obviously this is quite a large bag, so it means that it's not draping over. However, it can be done on a machine that hasn't got a flatbed, an extension table. When you go around the corner, just hold this down and just sew. I'm using a stitch length 2.4, and when you go around the corner here, just go really slow around those corners. If you need to, keep adjusting. Make sure your back panel, which is this side, is always lying flat. Okay, so I've sewed all the way around. As you can see, it's attached. Keeping that zip open, we're going to do the front main outer. and keeping the lining still rolled up, the best ability of it being rolled up in my case, like so. Oh. Yeah, keep that as out of the way as possible. That's all you're wanting to do, is not have it in the seams. And then once again, match up the 2 centres to the 2 centres of your top and bottom of your main outer front. Flip those down and clip all the way around and sew it together using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've gone ahead and attached that. So we have got the outer bag completely finished apart from the handles. Now if you are doing bias binding as your edge to finish off your edges, what you will need to do is follow the next few steps of how to make the bag inside lining, main, front and back, with attaching the 2 style of pockets. Then you will lie your bag wrong side to the wrong side of whichever side of the bag you are the bag lining. So for instance, this will have one of the zip pockets on, or the slip pocket. Flip that over. You have to match up all the way around, clip it into place and then space stitch it to the seam allowance. Bring your gusset down and base stitch it again to the seam allowance, and then repeat it for this one here, like so. And then basically you would, before you turn the bag right side facing out, do the bias binding around the edges. But because we are not doing the bias binding in the video, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next step, which is making the inside zip pocket and the inside slip pocket.